thanks for joining us for this, and thanks for taking out time from your schedule for this.
My pleasure. Welcome to Lemon Yellow.
It's great being here. It's a great office, firstly, and it's a great environment also. So you ride to office on a bicycle every day?
Yes, that's what I've started.
Okay, yeah.
And see, as I've told you, I mean, I've been to Mumbai since my design journey started. I've been used to travel long. So my last job required me to travel 2 hours at one side. So I was, looking forward to something where I'll need to travel less, where I could save some time, and in terms of, so it'll be a less carbon, one car less. So that's the reason I try to cycle to the office.
So let's get to design then. So let's get to it then. So what is innovation to you?
So there is a design great who has always said that, Dieter Rams, he said once that, you cannot understand good design if you don't understand good people. So for me, good design is basically creating a product, creating something which is solving the real problems for the users. Rather than you as a design company, you try to solve it for the personas or use cases. Rather than solving a problem for personas or use cases, try to solve the problems for the real users. So innovation for me is something which I will create, which will solve the real problem. So that's innovation.
So you started your career as a visual designer at StarTV.
Yeah.
Do you think it is essential for every designer to take up graphic design or visual design initially in their career?
I won't say it is essential, but it really helps. So I come from a design school where my fundamentals of designs were very clear. When I graduated, I spent 5 years in design school. So it really helps in terms of understanding the basic design principles, which are the core principles, which are effectively, although you're going towards the digital world, but it helps. So for me, it helped because, and of course, somebody like me who's come from a design school, it becomes very clear for them what design principles to follow, and then I believe it becomes easier for us to graduate to the next levels of design, be it user experience, for example, where we are doing currently. So fundamentals remains the same. So whether it is a user experience, whether it is a user interface, the design fundamentals still remains the same. So I believe I think it's a good thing that you should know design principles.
So it sets a process that you follow, a design process in the head of the designer.
Yes. So for example, you don't need to teach those basic principles of designs when you are converting your designs to any format. So that helps.
Okay. So any core principles that you recall from that time that actually helped you change the way support the way you look at design right now?
So there is I will not be able to pinpoint any core principles, but whenever I design, I generally, back of my mind, I always have that in my senses that I need to follow these design principles. For example, be it, say, when I'm using a typography, for example, the isolation domination formula works. So when I'm using any visual cues, in terms of if I'm using any icons, how the balance should be. If I'm using a particular color in visual design, I know that this colors works in the color palette. There are reasons why these color palettes are designed. So it generally, I think it helps.
Okay, so you've worked in like various domains of design throughout your career, and it's a loaded experience to be fair. Can you just define these different domains for our viewers? So there's a lot of ambiguity around the different domains of design out there, especially for people who are not going to the school to learn design. So I'll just call out the names, and probably you can put them in a line or two the way you want. So we'll start with user interface.
So for us, or for me, user interface is the first thing which the users will see, interact with. So it's the first step where anybody is being presented in front of. So that is where the first interaction happens. So user interface for me is the first interaction for that user.
So the touching point with the
user. So the journey starts with a user interface. Graphical user interface is where
the
journey starts.
user experience design?
So when the user starts using that interface, that becomes an experience. So for example, so Don Norman says that you don't fall under these jargons saying that user interface or user experience. It's more of a common sense. So even if, for example, if you and I go out for a restaurant and come out, the feeling what we tell, so for example what we do is we tell them that probably I'll say food was great, ambience was good, or I'll say the waiter was very cooperative, the overall experience was good. So that's the same thing in terms of when you are moving towards the digital world. The experience is, I mean, whatever the emotions or whatever the users feel when he starts using that interface becomes the user experience.
Okay, great. I don't think so. It could have been put in a better way, to be honest. Interaction design.
So interaction design is, so probably what happens is when the wireframes are done and when we are setting up the interactions for the any for example any steps a user is going to take, what happens from his journey, say from A to B, B to C. So all those steps are defined in interaction design where user knows that. But before interaction design, I think the information design comes. So okay. Information design is where the structure is defined. As a designer, you know that this is what the area and this is what the defined area looks like, and on that information design comes the interaction designs where you are now adding an interactions where what the behavior will happen. So when a user is tapping on a button for example on a mobile phone, user should feel that it is, I mean he should know that there is a tapping involved. So all those things turns into interaction design.
Okay, so the feedback from the system is included in
yes, in terms of still on a wireframe stage, but yes.
So information architecture is the one we discussed right now, the one that precedes the interaction design. Yeah. And the product design?
I mean this is a new term which has been come now, which is, so people are calling it product design. Product design is nothing but I mean it's the overall experience of what that product is. So it is a combination of, so let's start from a visual design, information architecture to interaction design, and the overall experience of that product, which is a product design.
Okay. Visual design?
Visual design is very close to me because I've started I started my journey from visual design. So visual design is basically making your user interface looks beautiful, elegant. It gives you, I mean it adds whatever you need as a flavor to that product. So okay. You add colors, you add icons, illustration, sometimes photography. So it's more of towards the aesthetic part of design.
Okay, so is this somewhere near to user interface design also? Like, would you count them on the same pages?
It is, but generally what happens is what I've seen is in India, as I've spoken to you earlier also, so the visual designers are calling themselves as user interface designers, which is not the case. As I've told you, there is a lot of other things which he or she will learn probably when they'll actually go on and start working on the product. But visual design is one part of user interface, I would say, and very important part, I must tell you.
Okay, so human-computer interaction design. It's a very huge, heavy term, mostly used in the West, I guess. What does that mean exactly?
No, so I mean, I would like to call it more of a user-centered design rather than human-computer interactions or what it says. But this is, I think that's the core part. You cannot miss. So user experience, I would still say, is part of human computer design or user-centric design. So for me that is the top layer part, and then user experience still becomes a subset of human computer interaction or user-centered design.
So is it human computer design the interaction with the machine, and human-centered design is focused more on the user?
Yes, that's absolutely. I mean, so when I'm doing user-centered design, my focus is I'm keeping my users at the center and building that experience. But the same experience when I'm, for example, when the user starts getting that experience from a machine, so that becomes a.
Oh. So, is it fair to say that the process till the prototype is actually human-centered design, and the process after the prototype It becomes a human-computer interaction.
Yes, at certain stages, yeah, you can say that.
Okay, great. So, a lot of individuals are the only designers probably working at some startup in India. The startup culture is booming, and they are expected, they're hired to do a lot of domains of design, which probably is not in their scope also. Now, you have worked at RedIff for around more than 9 years there, and you worked on different products there, like microblogging, social network, forums, and search, and there's many more. And so, how did you manage to work on so many products at RedIff?
So at RedIff also we don't. There were not a case where I was working on the multiple projects, but I worked on those projects separately, say for a year and it works. So what I would suggest is also for the young designers who are going towards that. Probably it's like challenging yourself, right? So what happens is if you are working continuously on one product or one project, it becomes a little monotonous. You need to challenge yourself, go out to different product, try speaking with different users, just to challenge more. And so it's I believe it's a great learning for me. When I was working on multiple projects, I could learn a lot of things. I could speak to a lot of different users, different use cases, different stakeholders to in terms of management to convince. So as you grow in terms of a design person, it is an excellent opportunity for you to learn. So I think it is a good thing. There is no negative in that. You should always if at all it is possible, you should always challenge yourself, move to different product, learn a lot of new things. So yeah.
So it's a struggle to a better phase in design.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are at a stage where you're learning, right? You're learning. You should not stop learning, and this is a great way where you are allowed. So that's yeah.
So what would you suggest to such designer who is working on multiple products in multiple domains, who's taking care of interaction design, communication, and content? Because designers are expected to take care of content on the website also. And so, what would you suggest to such a designer who is doing all this stuff, so that he can make the optimum use of this thing, and make the most out of the opportunities he's having, and at the same time not overdoing stuff?
So he should be ready. As I've mentioned, he should be ready to accept what is there for him to learn. Get that opportunity, get the positives, learn what is good for him, what is he has not learned so far. So my advice is to, if you are switching products, if you are use that for the betterment of your own learning. So there is a lot of learnings to be done, and this is the right way. I believe he's got a chance. You should utilize it more.
And what would you advise to the employer, so he or she can utilize the design resource that they have in a good way, but at the same time not over exhausting the designer? Because it might happen the designer might feel overwhelmed with the work he's given, and probably feel detached from the company then.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a challenge. So what I'd say is, so designers are not unicorns. They are not supposed to do or know a lot of things. So probably for example, when I am a member of a design community, UX design community, where my duty is to tell the business owners that hey, there are different variants and different sections of design. There are designers who are expertise are defined, but still probably what I would suggest them is to focus on, say, two core areas. For example, if that designer is good at, and then there should be two which are nice to haves. So probably he should not worry about those, but at least it's nice to have. So don't overburden the designer. Give him a specific scope. Of course, there are culture in India is there is going to happen an overlap of the functions, but at least try to keep it to minimal, at least 2 to 3 design functions. So for example, if that user is that designer is good at low fidelity, high fidelity prototyping, and say user research, then probably you should stick him with that. And then nice to have could be if he can do animations well, or he can do visual designs, but that's again a nice try.
So since you brought up this concept topic where there is an overwhelming burden of work in Indians specifically, because there's a lot of competition here. So, but do you think such kind of environment where there's a lot of pressure and competence around the designer, is this environment not good for the designer? Because a designer needs to be an open-minded person.
Unfortunately, that is true. But so for us now, as I've traveled, I almost like 15 to 16 years in this design field. My challenge is to first convince the owners that one, there is a design that is needed, and then within design team this is the function, different functions which are there and which make sense to have these functions. So first is to probably what do you say, educate the owners first about the importance of design and design functions, and then try to create that process within the, when I'm building for example a design team there, try to implement that within that team. So design as a function in an organization is still a long way to go. People are now realizing the importance that designers needs to be a separate function. Otherwise, what I've seen or what I've been through is design. There is always a designer attached to a particular function. So there is not a design team as a separate. But now we are moving towards, there are better things ahead. People have realized the importance of design as a separate department, which also adds, for example, money, or monetarily it is beneficial for a company to have a design team. So hopefully we are moving towards I think a better future.
So design is actually driving business currently.
It has started. People have started realizing the importance of design. It is yet slow here in India, but I could see a lot of positives. I think a lot of good companies are focusing on design, designers, design functions.
Is it fair to say that this is a great time to be a designer?
Oh, absolutely. This is a great time to be a designer, and all the younger guys who are coming, they are extremely sharp and intelligent. I think whenever I met them, I think I'm very, very impressed with the guys. They are extremely, the future is good for Indian design, is what I can say.
Yeah. So if there's a designer who is just entering a design school, or someone who has just graduated from design school, what would you suggest or advise them to make the most of this great time for design that we are in right now?
See, so for example, if you go back to my time, resources were very limited. Access to the resource was was limited to the people who were afford to spend. So we were not fortunate enough to had that access of information. So but now that internet has gone, there is the world is getting closer. There is a lot of resources, a lot of learnings available for any design school boy or girl to grasp or hold on to. So what I would suggest is keep learning. I think there is a lot of learning there which is easily available. There is a lot of scope for them to understand now that we've moved. So I mean, for example, user experience as a term it is not that old. It is just 25 years back. The process have been set. There is so now that we are seeing that there is a process. So for us, when we started early, there were no processes. We were nothing. So there was everything that we were learning was new. But now there are fixed processes. There are courses which are designed for user experience, for example. So there are defined areas. So there are a lot of options for these younger guys to choose from. So I think it's they have to make a good proper choice. Keep their eyes and ears open, learn always, and probably they'll find what they want to.
So one of your many responsibilities at RedIff was to figure out potential performance improvements in a product. Now my question is, how do you keep on building and bettering a product which is already working really well in the market? And what feedback loops do you trust for yourself to to be sure about this is the change we need in the product?
So it is very important to be connected to the real users all the time. You have to be connected to them, otherwise it won't help. So whether our product is doing good or bad, it's our assumption. Probably the number shows that there is a growth, but still, as a designer, as a UX designer, or probably as a product designer, you know that there are still some areas which needs to be improved. And when you go to, so there is a you should always go back and validate with the data. When you try to validate it with the data, you'll automatically find the gaps, and then you try to improve. So as I can tell you that I think so, whenever you are so there has to be a review system all the time. You have to review every time, go back again, change, re-alter it. And that's the fun being on the side of digital, where you can quickly re-alter it, check with the audience, come back again, working, not working, again go back to the drawing board, try to solve that problem, revalidate. So it's a fun process. And I think you should connect to the users all the time. The moment you lose that touch, then your product starts deteriorating.
All right. So, what feedback processes should one designer install with the user? So, like there are multiple there are multiple ways to get feedback from the users. So, what are the processes that you believe are the best that work best for you?
I think talking to the users is the best process, I would say. So, for example, when I was building, not for RedIff, but when I was building an mobile application for a retail banking application, what we did was we behaved like a customer care executives, and we spoke to the real users. Because when the banking, for example, banking calls happen, that is the time when these guys are extremely angry, frustrated, they are not able to find something, and they use bad language. That's a different story. But what happens is, as a designer or as a design owner, when you hear that call, you with a paper and pencil, you can actually go back and draw points which are creating a panic for them. And then you can go back to the drawing board, correct those points, and then redesign, for example, or re-alterate, and then present them the new options. So what I would suggest is the best feedback option available should be that you are trying to connect to the real users. I had that privilege. I could able to speak to the real users. Probably most of the designers may not have, but whatever that at any level, for example, if that matter, a designer had to speak to the product manager, or if he has to speak to the analytics guy, he should go speak, get that feedback, and try to analyze it in our context, and then probably give them the solution, is what I would say.
Okay, so after RedIff, you moved on to Snapwork Technologies, now which was an agency, a design agency. Yes. So how does a designer adapt when such a change comes in his or her career? Basically, what I mean to ask is, what is the difference between an agency and a product company, and how does one go through the change while shifting from one to another?
So the when you move towards agency, what happens is you are not in control of the users. Wherein when you are in a product company, you are completely in control of the users. You know who the real users are, who know their problems. You are in touch with them. You know a lot of things about the users. So, but what happens to when you go to an agency? Probably you have to be rely on the clients in terms of giving that information. Yeah. So that's the only difference I could sense. Otherwise, so there is a layer comes in between as a client and then the real users. So you are again solving problems for the real users, but only through the clients or the clients which you have. But it is again fun to work with an agency, because you can work on variety of projects. There is a lot of different projects you can learn on. There is a lot of, again, as I've told you, different use cases, different users, different learnings, different fun. So it's fun to work with agencies as well as a product company as well. What I feel personally is, for example, is for me, whether it's an agency or a product company, if I'm working for the real users, then I'm happy. The moment I'm detached with the real users, then there is a problem.
So this must have happened quite a few times, I believe. When your vision for the user does not match with the vision of the client in an agency. So how frustrating, how far this can this situation go, and how do you manage clients in an agency then?
So, as an immature or a learning designer, frustration level is high. As you move along, your frustration level comes down. You know that there is a reason why client is also, saying something. Generally, what I've seen is designers come with a lot of ego. We generally say that how the hell the others can, comment on my design or question on my design. But then as you move along, you realize that there are business goals, there are business prospects or propositions. You have to make ourselves align with that, and that's a great learning. So what I would say is, it's not frustrating. I mean, what happens is it evaluates. I mean, it makes you more responsible in terms of the way you present the design to the client. So either you convince them or they convince you. One thing happens, and probably we should, as a designer, should try to convey them that, hey, I am doing something not because I like, but because I want your product to do good. And so basically what happens is I need to convince them that I am not designing this product for probably your management, but I am designing this product for your users.
So basically, it's about selling your design.
Yeah, it is. So it's an art. So we've never, as a designers, we've never into selling. But now, so it is not written anywhere. You won't learn that in design school. Probably you will learn visual design, information design, interaction design. But selling your design is not a course which you.
But if you can't sell it, you won't.
But yes, so you have to sell your design.
You have to be a salesman.
Absolutely, you have to be a salesman.
So what kind of company you are comfortable in? Agency or a product company?
Not really. So I've started my own agency, so I'll definitely I can say that I'm comfortable with an agency. But doesn't matter. I mean, when I was working for a product company also, there was immense fun working with a product company versus an agency. As long as I like what I'm doing, I think it doesn't matter. And it should be that to all the designers. If you like designing, then it doesn't matter whether it's an agency or a product company.